Beyond Bitcoin Hangouts are meant to give everyone a voice, a chance to speak with others who are passionate advocates for expanding the blockchain's use cases out into the world and beyond. Do you have a crypto community you would like to represent and hold open hangouts for? If so, you might find yourself on the path to owning a stake in Beyond Bitcoin. We are looking for people who care about people who want to bring others together, because crypto communities are people. Beyond Bitcoin is a movement of thinkers and doers in the crypto space. And if you feel you are one of them, reach out to beyondbitcoin@gmail.com for more information on how to debut your community's efforts to reach to the stars and beyond. Welcome everybody to another Beyond Bitcoin Hangout. Today is Friday, July 8th, 2016. It has been a crazy week in current events and also a little bit interesting in the crypto sphere as well. There's some stuff going on in the Steem ecosystem that we were talking about before we started, and a little bit of a crossover between that and BitShares, based on an announcement that Dan Larimer posted, and an individual from the BitShares talk forums posted something regarding it, and it's started a long line of conversations. And I'm going to say right now that because of some of the issues with Steem changing how everything has worked this week, it's been a little bit difficult for people to find Beyond Bitcoin's tag. So we only have two people who are currently posted and RSVP'd. However, I will go ahead and I will start out by saying that PeerPlays is in first place for that. So if you guys want to go ahead and cover any updates or anything that you wanted to cover, you guys are number one on the list, so you guys are the ones who get to talk about it first, and I guess I can just pass off the torch whenever you guys are ready.
All right, I'll get started. My name is Jonathan Bahai. I'm the president of Bunker Chain Labs, the company which is heading up the PeerPlays project. So, PeerPlays this week. We introduced the profit sharing module release last Friday. Michael has an article explaining that in more detail, and we'll be posting that this afternoon on our news site. So you can check that out later this afternoon. It's going to give more details on how the profit sharing module actually works. We have our logo design contest going on, and that is ending Sunday night. So if you haven't put in your entries, get them in ASAP. If you want to enter, just go to peerplays.com/logo-contest.html. Again, you can find the links all over our various sites, and we will be going through those next week we'll be going through those, and then we'll be announcing winner next Friday. We are also going to be introducing a new referral rewards program, which will be launching the following week, and it will be an opportunity for PeerPlays holders to earn some extra rewards for social sharing and promotion. And we will be putting more information out on that in the coming week. And finally, this week, for the third time in a row, an article about PeerPlays made it to the #1 trending article on Cointelegraph.com, which is awesome. This means that there are a lot of people that are interested in what we're doing right now, which is awesome. And we have a lot more developing and news to come in the following weeks, so be sure to join our email list at peerplays.com and keep up with the updates.
For anybody who's wanting to go and check out PeerPlays news, it is at www.peerplays.com/news, correct?
That's correct.
Is there any other way that people can contact you guys if they are wanting to work with you or partner in any way, or find out how to get contact for interviews or any of this stuff?
Well, on our website, we list various social media contacts. They can message us on Facebook, on Twitter. Any of those channels will work. They'll reach us, and we'll be able to respond to them.
Thanks much, Data. Crypto, do you have any input that you'd like to add on to this?
No, this week Jonathan covered everything. So I'm just here to listen and maybe add some commentary in the future, depending on how the rest of these conversations go today.
Cool, cool. Well, number two was actually Christopher Lavelle from the Emmercoin project, and they were going to talk about merged mining today, but he's been having some problems with his cell phone becoming a brick. I wholly understand and can empathize with that position, as my son destroyed my phone recently. So what I was going to say is I'm just going to let him know that it's okay if he can, potentially come on next week or the week after and talk about it. But I did want to, real quick, while we're here, have everybody sign the ShareBits guest book. I'm going to be testing whether these tokens are easily distributed using the bot right now, or if there's anything that needs to be fixed. It's back, but it's not back. It's a tool that we're using. It's something that I've heard that there's potentially some cool things going on behind the scenes in the BitShares ecosystem with other tipping projects, which I am very much looking forward to. So, but yeah, I'm glad to see everybody's interested in signing it. So we can kind of log everybody who has been here, who's participated, and who is continually bringing value to this little project that we're running. So thank you to all of you for participating, and make sure that you put down your BitShares talk mumble and consider doing so with your email as well, because I would like to get together a little email list of those who join these hangouts, so whenever there are special hangouts that I'm going to have in the future as the Block Explorer, that you guys will be given potentially like good deals on getting access in. So I'm trying to find ways of paying you guys back, because you guys are making this possible. If I showed up every week by myself, it would probably be interesting for a few people out there who have psychology degrees and such, but but beyond that, it would probably not be very interesting. So the big thing that I wanted to talk about today, that Data brought up to me actually, and it kind of became number one. What is everybody thinking about the new, let's call it an announcement, but it's not an official announcement. It's more of an announcement of an idea and a concept, and see what everybody thinks. This is about Bytemaster's plan for Steemit, and it seems like it has caused a bit of ruckus on the forums. So anybody have any input or thoughts on, their first impressions on what is going on here?
Do you mean about the potential merger?
Excuse me? Did
Can
somebody
you
say
elaborate?
something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Dan is talking about, well, he says phase one is the bootstrapping of the stable cryptocurrency here. Phase two is bootstrap the market cap, or the marketplace. My gosh. And this is where they kind of talk a little bit about what Data was talking before we started here, kind of a non-violent takeover of Craigslist. And it seems like they're considering creating a marketplace within Steem itself that would essentially make it compete directly with OpenBazaar, Craigslist, Angie's List. Man, I'm sure there's a list of others. And then the next part is sidechain smart contracts and smart coins. And this has kind of gotten people into the conversation that BitShares is being abandoned by Dan and the development team who's been working on BitShares for a long time, and then now has mostly moved over to Steem. But we were talking a little bit about it earlier, and Crypto brought up a very good point about the side chains and how it seems like it's potentially going to make the entire ecosystem of DPost chains more robust. Side chains is kind of one of the big things that we've been talking about in the BitShares ecosystem for quite a time, right? And it's been very difficult to move forward with something like that because it's an expensive venture. But it seems like Steem might be opening it up to, or offer us the ability to open it up to have many side chains into BitShares. Does anybody here agree or disagree with my assessment?
Well, since we're really talking about speculation here, since this is something that wasn't put down firmly, it strikes me, I mean, I think I said this earlier, it strikes me as really quite an odd thing that he's talking along these lines of adding all these economic kind of aspects to Steem it when it's really not part of its original purview, and it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense since he already has developed a strong engine in economics with BitShares. So it doesn't make, I mean, it's a specialization thing. If you can specialize in doing something as complex as either the social media or the economic system is, then you're going to be able to do a better job if you specialize in that area. But trying to make all things to all people, which I don't know, it just seems like a really weird thing that he's doing there. And I don't know if his reasons for doing it are more to stimulate conversation, or whether this is kind of just Dan Larimer spouting off some ideas that came to him, and he just throws it out there.
I think he comes up a little short on. He says the definition of a market is people and money, and that's just not true. There's 5 components, at least 5 components to a market. And here's a post I put on Steem recently, precisely about this. And while money and people and currency are obviously part of it, it's not all of it. And so I think there's a little bit more to it that needs to be thought through.
I think basically it's inevitable if Steemit is going to add private messaging, and it already has the ability for people to send Steem dollars and Steem back and forth to each other. Then all that's needed is to have a tag that doesn't pay people. But even if you kept it how it was, and people could get paid for their Craigslist type ad, that wouldn't necessarily hurt it. It's going to come, and we just have to get over thinking it's going to kill BitShares, or however much he wants to focus on one or the other. Doesn't matter. BitShares, the cat is out of the bag. It's open source. I wish Ken Code were here today, and just everything BitShares Munich is doing. It's Dan Larimer's role is incredible, and what he's incredible, but he's not the sole guy anymore.
I tend to hypothesize that the advent of completely trustless smart chains and the transfer of tokens between chains in a really fluid way, especially perhaps beginning simply with DPost to DPost side chains, is going to really highlight the both strengths and weaknesses of every particular chain as they pertain to whether or not that chain is really a profitable enterprise, or whether it's just something that's been purely speculative. And I guess this doesn't just apply to DPost chains, but it applies to all blockchain technologies and blockchain ledgers out there. There's a lot of, I mentioned this last week in an interview that I gave with a reporter, which was that the biggest issue right now is still the issue of profitability in a lot of these chains. There's speculation. There's a lot of people banking their hopes and dreams on what this technology could or would or should do, and if people just opened their eyes and started using it, or whatever the excuse is. But the fact is, not offering something people that to the average person that is somehow much better than what they're already using you know, along with a host of other factors that would get them to come and use your platform. Not doing that is basically, you know, not building something that's going to be sustainable once these chains start hooking up with each other, because you're going to have this sort of equilibrium, I think, that's achieved when you have a greater free flow of these assets between the chains. There's going to be a price discovery, I guess maybe we can call it, that's going to be a lot more indicative of what the true value of these tokens are. And so, you know, in that respect, my feeling is that regardless of what other chains are doing, individual blockchains and blockchain communities should really be focusing on what is it that my chain is offering people that they can't get in other places. What is it that I'm doing? What is it that we're doing to onboard people to use the tools that we've built for our chain, or the you know, the platforms or programs that we've built around, you know, this particular ledger and this particular group of people. And then once sidechains start coming into play, you know, you're going to have a better chance to sort of stand up to scrutiny. And you know, once that price discovery starts happening, you're not going to, you know, all of a sudden wake up and realize, wow, we just had massive, you know, speculation was the only reason why this token was worth anything to people. And now that they can easily move it back and forth between these other chains, the money's going to end up going towards, you know, the places where the true value is. So again, I don't know. That's just sort of a hypothesis that I have, and it may or may not be, you know, exactly how things play out. But it seems like it makes sense from sort of a meta, you know, economic perspective that sidechains are gonna change everything in a major way. I mean, I think they're going to be sort of the next major phase in this cryptocurrency space that's going to do a lot of shaking up and you know, and disruption.
That's a really good point. I mean, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but there is that dichotomy between stability and volatility. Your speculators need volatility in order to have a spread, but your users need stability in order to have low risk or have low cost of capital in order to do their work. So, you know, anything that moves away from this unhealthy speculative nature and more towards a solid, stable nature is probably a good thing. I mean, I think that would improve the space, or at least create a new place to play in.
One analogy would be that you have cities that have fantastic infrastructure for people to drive from point A to point B within the city, but no way to get from city to city. So by building an interstate highway system between the cities, you're going to stimulate a whole lot more economic growth from society as a whole, the group of cities, than you can if you're just dealing with things within a small area.
This is precisely how I see it too, because whenever you lay the roads between these cities, now you're talking about intercity commerce, which is a whole new level of volume that can be produced. Because let's face it, certain cities, aka chains, are going to be specialized. They're going to have, you know, their certain, you know, they might have their own common infrastructures and services, but you know, you might go to one place where the Football Hall of Fame exists, and then you go to another place where the woodcutting whittler Hall of Fame is. And the attractions for various cities are going to bring citizens from various other cities, and having this easy means of traversing to the locations to actually utilize these services is just going to enable people to bring more money to your city, because now you're opening up a whole broad list of services that otherwise might have been cut off from the average user or citizen of any given city before having those interconnected highways.
Right, and ultimately, you know, the city with the most sparkling jewels, the city with the most, the most features that the average person is going to want to utilize, and you know, is going to be much more robust in this, when commerce starts happening between the cities, right? I mean, I guess I'm kind of just repeating what I said before, but it really comes down to what is it that your chain is doing and doing really well. And if you don't have that established by the time this interchain highway, so to speak, starts being built, then you're going to find it harder and harder to compete against other chains that are very good at doing something. And the money and the resources and the attention and the loyalty is going to flow towards those chains for that particular purpose. And if you're just sort of an all-purpose junk drawer, so to speak, of randomness, or if you're just, if you're maybe, you're a clone of something that's done much better somewhere else, and you don't really have much else to offer besides that, then nobody's really going to care about it, and the money's going to flow away from you and or through you and to other places really, really quickly. And you're not going to offer any lasting value. Although paradoxically, you may still offer some sort of value to speculators, right? Who are, of course, like Dan just mentioned, the ones who feed off of and need the volatility in order to ply their trade. So there may still
ironically, not to interrupt, but ironically, those people, if that chain doesn't end up offering any very, very valuable services, they're already into the graphene ecosystem. So it might be easier for them to just start transferring their funds elsewhere within the graphene ecosystem, right? So that chain might have great marketing, because how many times do you see a chain that offers nothing innovative or amazing? All it really has is powerful marketing. And that in and of itself right now is a problem, because we do not have the ability to have these interconnected highways as easily, right? But once that happens, don't you guys think that it might drive more volume into graphene-based chains and BitShares itself?
Yeah, chains that actually have something useful to offer. Of course. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that just onboarding into the crypto ecosystem, once you're able to transfer funds easily. I mean, think of sort of the way the capital flows now. Like, once you sort of understand how to get money from here to there, yeah, you'll probably pay a lot of fees and have to pass a lot of gateways, which is in this case is also probably true, transferring from chain to chain. But once you get it one place, you get it all places. If you go to London or New York or Shanghai, economics are the same. Everybody understands how to move capital, how to invest, what type of investment instruments are available, what sort of returns you can expect, what sort of risk you're dealing with. No matter where you go, once you learn it, you know it. So people onboarding into crypto, once they sort of understand what it is, then the money's going to be able to flow freely towards the chains and the communities that are doing it well, that are well set up, the architecture is has a lot of integrity, the incentives are aligned in the right way for people to actually make money and be profitable through using the services that are offered by the chain. And in that respect, I think that graphene chains are still, absolutely superior, and have always been up to this point, in my opinion, in the potential that they offer for, creating these robust and profitable business models.
Since curiosity, I was going to say, since Ronnie of CCDK is not here and BitShares Munich is not here, and there are always new listeners to the show, somebody should say something for BitShares. Steemit is not going to replace a lot of features of BitShares anytime soon. BitShares soon will likely have blinded amounts by default. And the idea that the only way to onboard people is with Steemit, it's powerful. I was one of the first people to say that's one of the most powerful things about it. But the idea that the referral program can't work, or that fees necessarily get in the way, we know with multi-level marketing that is not the case. And we kind of have given up early. It's really too early to say what things like jackpots when you use something like BitShares Munich's point of sale system. There could be jackpots of user issued assets and things like that. And tipping may not be as great as social media for getting people on board, but it too we've only scratched the surface of experimenting with these things. So there's a lot to be said for BitShares, and it's a little too early to give up on that as a way to onboard people.
It's a good way of looking at it. Along these lines, I'm sorry, guys. I'm mostly sorry to Lafona. I've wanted everybody to talk a little bit about this before I cut in with the reading of other people's opinions here. But Lafona says here, I think the big thing with the marketplace is it allows Steem users another use case for SBD without selling it. Thus, people can earn and accumulate and spend crypto SBD, which is Steam-backed dollars for anybody who's wondering. With the sidechains, BitShares could be the place to go when people want to diversify their graphene-based crypto holdings into other types of financial instruments. BitShares is definitely more versatile when it comes to creating different financial instruments, but it always had a problem of recruiting new users with crypto. If Steem is creating new crypto users and with a bias towards graphene chains, it could really be good for BitShares, PeerPlays, etc. And I think that this is a very good way of boiling it down, at least in my opinion. And of course, this is all speculation, as crypto has said too. So it's an interesting subject, though, for us as a community to cover and not necessarily jump on and say, oh, this is all it, but say, hey, if it's this, then this is how we should look into responding to these things. It's a good idea for us to learn more about the space as it evolves. And as it evolves, all of us have noticed that it seems like it evolves quicker and quicker to the point where you need almost to have individuals who are reading across all of these different news outlets to find out what's going on in these ecosystems and how it's going to interplay together so we can kind of move forward with it. Do you guys see and agree with what Lafona is saying with regard to the other graphene-based crypto holdings and other types of financial instruments, and Steem kind of being a funnel to bring them into that area?
I read his post as he wrote it there, and he's got some good points in it, and it may work out that way. It's one possibility that I see may happen.
Is there a negative that anybody sees to this? I mean, I know what I see, but
there are no real negatives as long as we keep in mind that more than one experiment can be done, and if we don't like this direction, I own schmedit.com, the domain name, and we can just move it all to Schmedit.
I think there's a I think there's a lot of need and opportunity and almost requirement in my mind excuse me, at this stage for these particular graphene-based chains to cooperate with each other in some way towards developing a sort of comprehensive strategy for pursuing for branching out in the ways that we're describing. Again, I think that while there's probably more than one optimal way for each of these chains to thrive, I think that there also is it would sort of be wasteful for each of the chains to repeat what the other has done in sort of a way that creates redundancy and doesn't really allow each chain to sort of emphasize what it's good at. And I'm not saying that there aren't particular features that shouldn't be redundant between different chains, because again, an example would be PeerPlays. We'll have user issued assets, and the way that we're planning on working that in, it will have to do with in-game currencies, and also we've been working on an in-game marketplace setup that is going to be actually very similar to another post that Dan Larimer posted recently, which was kind of ironic that he was having the same ideas as us at the same time regarding strategies for setting up marketplaces. But these aren't necessarily things that are going to take away from BitShares, for example, and the BitShares UIA platform. But they are, still features that, is worth having some redundancy there. So, I think there's other things, that shouldn't be sort of overlapped. And, but again, I guess what my point where I was going with this is that, the main developers of these chains and sort of the main communities around these chains, there already is a lot of overlap. Obviously, you see a ton of BitShares people over in Steem. PeerPlays, we work with obviously people directly from BitShares, and so developing strategies going forward, I think it's worth it to have conversations and communicate. And I obviously we've learned a lot of lessons in terms of just coming out and sort of spewing the first thing that comes to mind, and that can have a destabilizing effect, as we've learned in the past. But at the same token, I feel like just doing things, sort of competing with each other in a real hardcore way, and just trying to outstrip each other is not necessarily at all going to help us in the long run, because the marketplace, while there is room for a lot of these things in a lot of different marketplaces, it also doesn't make sense in my mind for example, development to have to be paid for and pursued by multiple different teams to develop the same feature. Part of the reason that we in PeerPlays decided to release this recent profit sharing module under MIT was exactly that it didn't make any sense to essentially have something come out and have it be totally proprietary, something that was so what we felt important and key as a cornerstone to graphene. And so, we decided to release it under MIT because specifically the current graphene chains of BitShares and Steem that are currently on the path towards thriving, so to speak, are not direct competitors to PeerPlays. And them being able to use this feature doesn't take away from PeerPlays at all. And so sort of making that decision again was coming from this place that I'm sort of describing right now, which is this idea of we can support each other and actually create sort of a what did you call it the other day, Fuzzy, a mecha machine or whatever, a big mecha bot that has many arms and
you're calling Voltron.
Voltron. So
one thing that this go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Prometheus.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
One thing that this discussion underlies this discussion is how difficult it is to get different communities to cooperate and talk and come up with projects together. I know that's a subject that Fuzzy has been really focused on for quite a while, is how can we develop intercommunication and projects that overlap and bridge one community with another. And it can be very difficult when your community is specializing and focused in a certain area and you're trying to reach out to another one to establish that common ground or to establish a region where you can come up with something together that benefits both communities. I think we've seen how difficult it is to do that. So putting together this highway infrastructure, as I described it earlier, is not an easy thing to accomplish, but we can easily see the benefits that it can provide.
Can I step in here real quick?
What PeerPlays has done is the gold standard of that. They've released code. So they have released code that makes it possible to have a form of money that pays dividends. So I'm glad I haven't done anything with Schmidtcoin yet, because I want Schmidtcoin to have that.
Well, and this is something that many people have been talking about, right? How many times have you guys heard me saying, Beyond Bitcoin is something that I would like the community to have? And one of the foundational elements to that is to be able to share value that is earned with token holders. So, we have, how I've always seen it from actually very early on, and I think that many of us here have probably had this conversation before, and probably a while ago, but the power of the blockchain technology as an open source type of invention is that, like you said, we can have this code released. And once this code is released, that's just one more thing that developers out there who are looking for their solutions don't have to worry about. Or at least they don't have to, they can put 10% of the effort that they otherwise would have had to put into it to have to build it from the ground up. So once you have this collective toolbox of tools that we all build and add to and allow people to use, then these tools are what is going to make people gravitate toward building future graphene chains, right? I mean, it's almost like sharing common infrastructure. What do you want to say? Blueprints, right? Where a building in Dallas, Texas is going to be very similar to a building in another state. So the fact that knowledge and those assets are there, it uplifts everybody, and that will help gravitate people toward wanting to build and work in this ecosystem. Do you guys agree or disagree?
Well, another way that's absolutely true. I mean, anything that can be reused should be reused, and everything that's used, and actually in engineering, anything that's used and works becomes a standard. So they take the standard and they make it, put it in a form that can be replicated by others, so they don't have to redo all those calculations. Another important piece is that you have the output of one becomes the input of another. Okay, so that would be like the output of the architect becomes the input of the engineer, becomes the input of the contractor, becomes the input of the the owner, and so forth. And that's kind of true for any complex system. Anything more than what one person can build in their garage has to go.
That's the concept of permaculture you're talking about there, Dan.
What's the what?
It's the concept of permaculture. In agricultural regions, it's a matter of there's no waste. Everything that's a byproduct of one operation, which would be considered in a standalone environment to be waste, is actually, instead of being waste, is funneled into some other system that needs that as an input.
Well, not really from a waste and surplus standpoint, but more of, I depend on that contractor to be there because my output has to go to something to make it valuable. So there's a sense of collaboration. I'm just saying that this could happen everywhere in agriculture and in building construction and so forth. And I'm wondering, our side chains, do they facilitate that, or do they inhibit that?
Well, you're speaking of the results of one being the building block of another. So there's kind of a positive building process where, yeah, like you said, rather than the waste being recycled, it's actual sort of the intended product being the input for another, perhaps more complex, or another layer of building, right? Or another layer of production or creation.
A more complex layer, essentially.
Well, yeah, perhaps. I mean, some sort of meta layer that, it may be more or less complex in the sort of unique individualistic state, but it's a different
still
layer,
needs
let's say,
that to exist.
Right. I mean,
those are derivatives. Actually, I'm trying to describe a derivative, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, okay, sure. But anyway, aside from the nuance of how that particularly works, talking about sidechains, an interesting idea behind sidechains, and I don't have an answer specifically to your question, Dan, but something interesting to consider about sidechains is that sidechains can be built and connected unilaterally. So both chains don't have to agree, I don't believe, and Dan Notstein is actually on this call. I don't know if he's listening right now or if he has a comment about this, because he would know more than I do. But both chains don't necessarily have to agree for one chain to set up a sidechain. So in other words, for example, PeerPlays could decide to sidechain to BitShares, and BitShares wouldn't necessarily have to approve that. PeerPlays could just set it up and be able to transfer back and forth from BitShares. So there is an element of sort of unilateral decision making that could affect the processes that you're describing, Dan.
Well, that's okay. I mean, when I talk about these tranches, if you will, so first you talk about, you have to have clean water, you have to have safe transportation, and you have to have food, or otherwise people just devolve. So that's the first layer that nobody even pays attention to. What people do with that food and that transportation and that clean water and that education is purely up to them. It's not, you don't have to go back to the original engineer and say, hey, I want to drive my truck backwards here. It's just, so it kind of goes, it sort of builds on top of that. So then your third layer of infrastructure would be the person who actually designs the truck. And then the fourth layer of infrastructure would be the person who puts the food in the truck, and the higher layer of it's so it kind of peers off that way. And I'm again looking for a model that can be replace the five components of an economy. You really have to replace them with something else, and you have to integrate them. And if you ever expect to replace the economy, so that's kind of what I'm tickling for here.
It's a really interesting concept, but it is very much along the lines of what we're talking about here. Now, the question is, and I think this is what concerns people in the BitShares community, is that kind of like what Crypto was saying earlier, is that Dan often will come up with some great ideas, and they're very broad and far-reaching. And he doesn't necessarily always give the specifics. So those holes, there are holes in there kind of because the specifics don't always exist, which gives people with, really no other alternative but to speculate as to what is in those places where those holes exist, or what kind of puzzle piece needs to fit in there. And I'm kind of curious where you guys think, do you guys think that that Steemit is going to potentially offer things that, I mean, for instance, zero fee trading is potentially possible on Steemit, but something that BitShares might have to rework in order to accomplish. Do you guys see things like this as an issue?
One thing about Dan's style of putting things out there that are kind of half-baked, or things that he's not really fully vetted out in his thoughts, is that it does stimulate thoughts. It stimulates a lot of creativity on the part of people when they think about it to come up in a speculation. What can come out of that speculation could be good or bad. So I'm kind of mixed as to whether or not his style is actually good for the overall benefit of the people that listen to him in that regard. It's hard to say, because like I said, you can have the good side of it where it stimulates people to think, but you can have them running off in the weeds and going off in a direction that won't be necessarily beneficial. So it's kind of hard to say whether that's really good or bad.
I think he likes to open Pandora's box and then walk away for a few days, and which is
my favorite Pandora's box that he opened and everybody ignored was that he claims that Bitcoin can be taken down for an expenditure of about $10,000 a day for, I don't know, a couple weeks or so. And, everybody pretty much just ignored that because it's too weird to think about.
It's also rather extreme too. I mean, if you think about what you just said that he put out there, that's not very many resources. There's tons of people that have those kind of resources. There are a lot of checks and balances within Bitcoin with regard to incentives and disincentives for doing that type of thing. So whether or not his speculation about that is correct or not, I mean, I think a lot of people probably just missed it because there's so much that's published about Bitcoin that counters that thought.
Well, there was a lot, if I recall correctly, there was a lot of sort of game theory in that speculation as well, which was that, assuming that people are going to necessarily act no matter what, they're going to act in their own self-interest for money, even if they're aware that what they're doing could potentially be majorly disruptive for the network. So, that I tend to believe probably one of the reasons why Bitcoin has sort of held together despite some of the major should I say, inequalities in the the ways that mining is distributed and controlled, is simply that the self-interest that these people who are sort of in these major positions of control, is we don't want the network to go down, and maybe even short-term gain is not necessarily in our best interest if it means creating destabilization. So that game theory aspect of it may have not made it as ironclad and airtight as he originally perhaps it might have looked in his post like, oh, this is just 10 grand a day, that's it, boom, it's a done deal. I think the sort of game theory aspects were still weren't something that was sort of mathematically provable, and it was a speculation that had, but that's what's really interesting, and that's what I've
it's
always,
a very subjective thing that
that's
it
what I've
seems
always
like it's rooted in fact to a degree. Like, for instance, there might be the vast majority of people, or the majority of people rather, might 60-70% of the people in play might actually go in that direction, but there's another, there's the outliers that really can make a big difference that tend to be overlooked at times.
Well, and I think, this is one of the things that I personally have always, I don't know, sort of, I guess, admired about Dan Larimer's thinking and the way that he processes things too, is that, it's not just pure math for him. It's not just, oh, this is possible, so this must be how it works. I think that he integrates a lot of economic and human behavioral theory into his thinking, even if it's incorrect or his assumptions are not perhaps 100% accurate a lot of the time. That type of thinking and behavior, I think, is absolutely crucial to creating crypto economic systems that are useful and beneficial for human beings. And I think a lot of the tendency and a lot of the thinking that I've seen in other leaders in this space, let's say, has been towards the notion of the only goal here is to completely eliminate the trust in human beings from the equation. We have to have fully decentralized everything. There can be, we need maximum amount, like every solution. There's no balanced and weighted solutions in a lot of these theories that are put forth. There's no okay, well, this actually works and this is a widely trusted system, so why do we need to throw this out? Why are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater? I think
before it ever even gets to grow up and show us what it can give, what it can become.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of being able to sort of hybridize and use current existing trusted business models integrated with the blockchain, and rather than having to come in and say the blockchain, the sort of iron immutable will of the code, or whatever the famous line was, that was kind of a line of hubris that was recently sort of disproven in a major way in a particular platform that shall not be named. I think that the overall sort of idea of that is a fallacy, and is almost even a fantasy that somehow mathematics is going to replace all human interactions, and there's no reason to ever trust each other again. In my opinion, the whole one of the major benefits of integrating blockchain technology into sort of the human social order is so that we can begin to trust each other more in certain ways, so we can rebuild the trust that we once had, perhaps more than we do now, because of sort of this late in the game realization that many people are having, that there's a certain group of people, so to speak, let's call it, or a certain class of people that have absolutely completely betrayed the trust of the rest of us. It's sort of soiled a lot of people to the notion of having any systems at all in the future that require trust in someone, and I think that's again, I think that's just a total fallacy, because I think that in general, a lot of people and a lot of business people, if the incentives are aligned correctly, there's a huge amount of weight that can be given to the notion that things that are incentivized and aligned correctly are going to catalyze, are going to encourage a certain amount of good behavior and trust, because it's going to be in everybody's best interest. And anyway, so getting back to what I think is very good, and what I really like about a lot of Dan Larimer's, the way that he thinks about things anyway, is that he's always attempting to sort of hybridize what he knows and how he knows and understands how economics, how people work, how human beings interact with each other, with the systems that he's attempting to set up on the blockchain.
Out of curiosity, well, first off, I'll say this. I think that Steem is a natural extension of exactly what you're talking about, crypto. And I think the second point that I would like to make is that, and this is one that we all have heard so many times, even from Dan's mouth, but at the same time, we sit here and we have to remind ourselves, I think, that these are all experiments, and we are here because we're trying to find the solutions that are going to make the world a better place. That's the ultimate goal. I mean, sure, we can all be super wealthy, but if we're, kings in a world of ash, then what does it matter if we could have been citizens in a world of plenty, right? So we're sitting here and we're dealing with these struggles between now two chains, and there's a fear that I'm seeing from a lot of the people who, and it seems like and it's not all this, but there's definitely an undertone I've noticed of people who really haven't really gone to Steem it at all and actually participated. And I feel like maybe those people are a little bit afraid for BitShares because they think that Steem is encroaching upon the space during a time when maybe we should be looking at all this as, okay, how can these two tools work together? How can we put these things together in a way that makes sense? And what can we learn that was interesting. Along the way, right? So go ahead.
Some of the very large shareholders in Steem did not come from BitShares, so they have absolutely no incentive to work with the BitShares people. As a matter of fact, when I mentioned in one of my posts on Steem, in the very early days, that this was a good way to fund projects in BitShares, one of the large shareholders said he would never vote for me again.
That's interesting. Now, I will also say, though, once upon a time, that's maybe one or two people, right? Now, and with that said, and this is kind of along the lines of why I had a frustration this week with Beyond Bitcoin tag essentially disappearing from Steemit, was that I recognized, and I still believe this, that getting a community who are working together to promote and help each other post quality content on Steem is kind of a very powerful way of helping to leverage Steem for whatever cause you really want to back and to promote and to see built. All right. So if you want to advocate for a cause, having that community that is built that supports you about it, that's a very strong way of accomplishing it.
You know what, though, Fuzzy? I see the same thing in myself when I see the Dash guys advocating for Dash and trying to raise... Well, so far I haven't seen them try to raise money, but I see them try to direct people to their projects. I get pissed off because I think it should all be directed towards BitShares.
Hey, can we...
Of course,
Fuzzy...
so... Is that wrong necessarily? Sorry, Crypto. Is that necessarily wrong when, I mean, if you're thinking about BitShares is a decentralized exchange, right? So you would want tools that help all cryptocurrencies that are going to be traded on that exchange, in my opinion, and would also give the ability to a broad community to actually, in a somewhat democratic fashion, where people actually have the power to vote on projects and to coordinate their efforts to vote up projects that they think are valuable. It kind of introduces competition into a space where people might have a tendency otherwise to let themselves and their ideas stagnate.
Hey, can I know we're at about an hour 10 now. I've got to get going pretty soon, but I wanted to ask, and hopefully this is okay, Fuzzy. I didn't want to totally interrupt the train of thought you're on, but there were a couple people in the sidebar here that said they had some other things to present, and I thought just sort of in the interest of keeping the new ideas flowing and also allowing more people to come on and talk. Cylonmaker2053 said that he has a investments course that has to do with both Steemit and BitShares, which I thought was a sort of a good segue since we're talking about Steemit and BitShares working with each other now. So I don't know, is Cylonmaker?
Yeah, just so you know, we're at 57 minutes on the actual recording, and I was planning on going into that toward the end, but I will definitely say, Cylonmaker, he didn't post to this week's RSVP, but he posted to last week's RSVP. And the way this is currently working and the way last week worked with the tags, I have no problem with him taking up and talking a little bit about what he's doing with his class.
Yeah, sorry, Fuzzy. I didn't mean to kind of steal your thunder.
No, man. No, it's no thunder. We normally will last about anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. We can move into that. Is there anything before we move into that that anybody would like to maybe finish on? Okay. Well, yep, then Cylonmaker, and then Reddy, you can tell us. Sounds really good.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Ta-da. Okay, so we have 9 undergrad students, and so it's fun. Since it's an investments course, I'm giving them hands-on investments or trading experience using the BitShares platform. And I just got their accounts open yesterday, or had them open their accounts, and just funded them today. So I'll be reporting, over time, probably posting some articles on Steemit of what they're doing. And the gist of the competition is the top 5 students with the highest end of class balances in their accounts are going to get extra credit. And
That's a really cool idea, man.
Yeah, no, they're excited because I'm giving them about $10 worth of BitShares or BTS to begin with, and just letting them keep that and letting them keep whatever they earn along the way. And then the class also includes a class participation component. So part of that is obviously in class, but the out of class participation is I'm having them create Steemit accounts, and then they're going to start participating on finance threads, econ threads, investments threads, posting topics to those threads, and so again on that competition, it'll be the top 5 students with the highest end of class wallet balances are going to get extra credit, and obviously the money that they've earned.
That's a great idea, man. This is kind of along the lines of what I was trying to say with Once Upon a Time. Because, what do you see if this were to work out, Cylonmaker? How I see it is I've taken classes online where I've had to post various things to forums, and there was really no incentive for people to go into real depth and to cover topics on a level that, that exceeded the necessary participation requirements. For instance, it needs to be 150 words at least. But on Steemit, it seems like if we were to move these types of forums that were used for education to something like a model like Steemit, you would essentially be able to get paid for your homework. And that would also be another way of essentially building a community who over time would follow you and work with you on things in crypto, so do you see over time, if this were to work, something that you could do this with future students and have essentially an army of financially capable and well-studied individuals who have also produced a lot of good content that would be able to help BitShares in the long run, and also whatever causes that you feel are important in the BitShares ecosystem?
That's exactly right. I like how you put that, having the army behind of well-educated and informed people. So my plan actually is this: I want to be a test case that I'm then going to take to the finance department overall, to the other instructors that teach finance courses, and then definitely pitch it to them to try to get them on board as well with using BitShares and Steem it. So the goal for me is, obviously, I want to expand people's understanding of the crypto technologies or cryptocurrency space. But obviously, I want to really promote BitShares because I think it's just an awesome open source peer-to-peer trading platform that anyone can just open an account and start trading right away. So that's the plan. We'll see how it goes. And then with respect to actually keeping these guys in the loop over time, you hit the nail on the head with participation in general. It's whenever you have discussion forums on things like Blackboard, it's just bare minimum. You do the bare minimum postings just to kind of prove that you're participating. But here, these guys are actually getting paid, and it's a competition as well. So hopefully, it sparks some interest. Already, the kids are pretty excited, and then hopefully they can stick with it. So then, future classes that we have, the alumnus are kind of interacting all along with the new students and helping them out.
Do you mind telling us the school and your real name?
Oh yeah, of course. Actually, I should have just logged on that way. So my name is Robert Viglione, and it's University of South Carolina. So
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys, you can see, if you just go on the Cylonmaker2053 thread, that's just a silly name I had from back in the day when I first learned how to code, and I was a big Battlestar Galactica fan. But so you can check that out, and I've got my profile on there already with an intro post.
I'd like to offer you some schmitz and giggles to add to your contest. Those are user-issued assets on BitShares that I've created. So I'll create a jackpot that you can add to your contest.
Awesome, that sounds great. Just send it on over. So yeah, you could just send it to the Cylonmaker2053 account, and then I'll just disperse to the students.
You got it.
And I would love to say right now, if Cylon, if you would like to have this covered, I will let you know. Actually, I'll get your email address and I'll add you to the Beyond Bitcoin Slack, and maybe we can get an extra little bonus where we can cover, bring the winners of this little competition on, or maybe even your entire class, and have you guys all talk about the experience for a hangout. I think that this is one of the places, whenever I saw this, it made me foam at the mouth. I'm behavioral side of learning and the motivators of learning. And I'm talking real learning, not just, rote memorization where you forget something after you take a test and it's never used again. This is functional experiential learning that actually is going to reinforce itself in multiple ways. And this is one of the places where my passions have been for psychology, and cryptocurrency popped into it kind of as an afterthought because of I was always looking into the gamification of learning. And when I saw this precisely, I was you can probably tell by my post that I was extremely pumped to see that you came up with this idea, man. So I will, in addition to Brindle Swans giving out tokens, I would love to bring them on at some point in time to talk about their experience, maybe even during and after.
That would be awesome. I would really love that. So I guess I'll pitch to the class and see, as the class evolves over the next 3 to 4 weeks, I'll find out how interested these kids really are. And maybe it'll just be the top 5 winners that we bring on, or maybe it'll be the whole class. But I think that would be awesome just to get them to see that there's more to this. There's real people out there. It's not just their crazy professor kind of experimenting with them.
Well, not only that, but the value exists that there would also be people here who they might choose to team up with and learn from as kind of mentors in this ecosystem. And you never know what these students are going to come up with to win this little competition that you're creating. You know what I mean? So the simple fact that you're opening this door is, it's really going to, what's interesting me is what's going to come from this. Once we enter this door and we move forward a little bit, what scenery is going to emerge? What are people going to build? And what's going to stand the test of time? Yeah. Yes, Cube. Partnering with BTS old timers. I'm sure there's a lot of traders on here.
I think part of the advantage might be too, coming from sort of the opposite direction, is a little bit of market research perhaps, or understanding, people coming from it that are completely outside and are sort of just given this project, and what was their experience, what was easy for them to use, what was difficult, what didn't make any sense, what was not intuitive, what was totally intuitive, and like you said, Fuzzy, what kinds of ideas
Brilliant
might
point,
they have?
Crypto.
We all we don't get that sort of feedback very often, I don't think, in terms of, people come on, if they don't like it, they just say, oh, this sucks, and they leave or whatever, and we don't get people who are really sort of taking the time to figure out why it sucks. And if you've got an assignment and you have to do something no matter what, then you probably have more time to think about why you like it or why you don't like it. So that seems like it might be another sort of valuable aspect to what you're doing.
Yeah, so
I just sent you 100,000 Schmitz and 4 giggles. There's only was 100 giggles created, so you can give 2 people prizes that are giggles, because giggles are only in units of 1. But anyway, it's amazing. BitShares the power. I just did that in a couple seconds while listening to you guys and participating in this forum.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I want to say definitely on the feedback mechanism, that is definitely part of the plan. And maybe I'll actually have them write up something formal, like a little write-up on their experiences, lessons learned, and suggestions for improvement. And I think the second part of that, and maybe this will come with getting them on the Beyond Bitcoin forum, is being able to identify different members of this community that are doing different things. And if we can list out what exactly people are doing, maybe we have coders out there, maybe we have traders out there, or people launching different crypto businesses, like PeerTrax. Getting that knowledge to the kids, and then ask them if they want to actually reach out and join any of these projects, I think would also have huge value to the community.
Well, along those lines, I wasn't going to say it right now, but you bring it up at the perfect time, I guess, for me to do it. One of my next projects has actually, you guys have heard me talk a little bit about the Block Explorer. And that is my own personal interview platform that I'm going to be using, and it's going to be under the Beyond Bitcoin umbrella. But what I'm going to do, and I already started this a few weeks ago, but some things have gotten in the way of me moving forward quite as fast as I wanted to. But we're going to be doing Community All-Stars, which is essentially BitShares. It's going to start with BitShares, obviously. Hold on. It's going to start with BitShares, obviously, and then we're going to move into other cryptos. But what I want to do is I want to get people to identify the all-stars of the BitShares community, the people without whom BitShares would not be what it is today and where it is today. And I would like to do specific interviews with each of these individuals who have been identified by the community. Let them give some background into how they got into crypto, how they got into BitShares, and what they're doing today. So this is the path that I want to take, and this might actually work very well with what you're doing, Cylon. So I'll make sure to get on that. Maybe we can get some details about how long this course is going to be, and I can look at trying to push that to the front of the queue.
That sounds awesome. And just so you guys know, the course ends on August 4th.
Okay, so in about a month.
Yep.
Well, I will get moving.
Cool. So that's all I had. I just wanted to bring it up to you guys. I figured you guys might enjoy hearing that information. So thanks for the time.
Certainly, and if there's anything that that you need from us, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know that I will contact you within 24 hours if I'm ever contacted by you. So if there's anything you need, even if it's something that you think is outside the realm of what we normally do, I'm very interested in the ideas and trying to help where we can.
Okay, awesome. I will send you my email address then so we can get talking.
Sounds good. Well, this is a perfect time. I'm going to just let everybody know we're sitting at about an hour and 20 minutes. Crypto is probably sitting at an hour and 30 minutes because he's been recording from the very beginning, I think, right? But please sign the guest book. And if you have an email address that you would like to add to that, so I can add it to my little list of people who I'm going to be able to easily reach out to whenever there's really cool or important things I would like to bring up to you guys, please add that email address. It doesn't, of course, have to be it doesn't have to be anything big, but if you would put that information, as much of the information as you can, it'll be very helpful. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to cover or talk about before we move forward? All right. What I'll say then is every week, no matter how bad of a week, no matter what the heck is going on, no matter how much seeming chaos, I just wanted to let all you guys know that I'm very thankful for you guys being here. You guys, all of you, give me hope, not just in BitShares and crypto in general, but in the world in general, because it tells me that people who join these hangouts are very serious about trying to find solutions, and they're persistent in trying to find those solutions. And I think as we look around us more and more, it is blatantly obvious that we need these solutions. And Clinton in prison. But anyway, but I did I say that? But anyway, thank you guys for attending, and please make sure to post to the RSVP thread that I will post. And I want to make sure that all of us have the opportunity to work on the Beyond Bitcoin tag. And I want you guys to all consider how I can give Beyond Bitcoin to all of you. This is something that is central of my focus, and I want to make sure that that happens because you guys are the ones who make this happen, which means to me that you guys are the only ones who I should be really looking at giving this to. So yeah, definitely see him.
Hey, can you hear me all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'm a custom miner from the Gridcoin community. I'm just a long-term holder of Gridcoin and BitShares since PTSX.
Awesome.
All right, so basically Gridcoin is a cryptocurrency that securely rewards BOINC computation, which can be like, there's 31 projects at the moment, and it ranges from attempting to solve cancer, Ebola, malaria, searching space for extraterrestrials, for SETI, mapping the Milky Way and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
SETI's what got me interested in Gridcoin, man. When you guys said that you could earn Gridcoin from searching for extraterrestrial life, I was like so pumped, man.
Yeah, so we reward Gridcoin on top of proof of stake at the moment. We've got about 2,000 users actively being rewarded Gridcoin. We've got about 7,000 in the team, so there's about 5,000 difference who have actually not properly set up a client yet. So that's something we've got to fix. But there's 230,000 active BOINC users and 3.5 million registered BOINC users. So there's a lot of room for Gridcoin to expand. The main thing that's holding us back is the team requirement. There's the other teams of basically BOINC has existed for over 10 years now, so people are very loyal to their teams. So that's something we've got to come get past.
Can you explain BOINC?
BOINC is an open source volunteer computing grid. So it's like you've got spare resources in your computer, so you sign up for a couple projects and you'll solve work units for these projects, and that can be, very beneficial for these for scientific purposes, basically.
Thank you.
So at the moment, we have created a market-pegged asset on the BitShares platform. We're waiting for integration into ZeroC's price feed script before that'll be properly live. And we've also created I've created a foundation proposal on the Gridcoin platform for integration into CCEDK, or OpenLedger is our bridge into the BitShares platform, and we're just basically waiting to hear back on that.
Have you done any posts on Steemit, and can you put a link to your post on Steemit in the sidebar?
Yeah, I shall do. I've participated in the Beyond Bitcoin kind of posts, but I'll create my own dedicated posts if that sounds good.
Oh, definitely. And I'll even go one step further and say that since you guys are obviously interested in working with us, if you add the Beyond Bitcoin tag to anything that you post with respect to the Gridcoin community and any updates, especially with regard to things that are collaborative efforts, I'll be very interested in upvoting it, because I think that that Gridcoin has generally, since I can remember, been very much aligned with the philosophy of BitShares. So I have no problem working to help upvote and help people identify the quality content that you guys are contributing.
Cool. It's worth noting that anyone can make a BOINC project. So the advantage we have over, say, like Ethereum is Ethereum's Turing complete, and you can execute scripts in the blockchain, but you can't actually run real computation. Like, you can't have work units running on your computer. Like, there is one Ethereum project that's trying to do that, but it's not well established. BOINC's been running for over 10 years, so there's trusted projects you can pick that aren't going to be malicious or anything like that. But yeah, since anyone can make a project, anyone from the BitShares platform could create, say, a project, and we would reward that with Gridcoin. What's also interesting is that... Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry.
All right, we've recently created a Project Rain capability. Basically, we're able to distribute Gridcoin according to how much you contribute to individual or multiple projects. So as a form of like tipping. But what I want to do is I want to expand this towards as a new share dropping vector for the BitShares platform. Say like I created a new BOINC project and ran it for about a year until we had a good amount of data on who's contributed how much computing power, and then I issued a user issued asset appropriate to how much each user has contributed. It's just an interesting idea I had.
Yes. You know what, CM? I am so glad that you came, because this is something that I've been looking forward to seeing what would happen as Gridcoin, if we could get Gridcoin and BitShares working collaboratively together. So let's please consider reaching out to me, and we can talk a little bit more in the future as well about how we can move forward. I would love also if you would do me one favor. Gridcoin is the other community that I have approached other than BitShares at this juncture for the community all-stars. I would love if you guys would be willing to help me out with filling up a Steem post with those individuals, because I'm certain that there are many individuals in the Gridcoin community who really should be covered for what they're doing, and should have the ability to teach other individuals what's going on in their ecosystem. And I think that what this platform has been meant for from the very beginning is really to enable that. And the Block Explorer thing is just going to be something to give them the direct credit for the, in a not necessarily, these hangouts are kind of, they're somewhat scheduled, and they're scheduled, of course, but they're somewhat formal. But there's a lot of informal talk. It's not always going to be the most polished content. And interviews enable me to give that polished content and give them the credit at the same time that they deserve, because oftentimes these people are doing it just for the love of it and not really receiving anything beyond that. And if we can give them some credit, if nothing else, for what they've done, I think that would be a wonderful step in the right direction. So if you can help me with that, I would be very willing to work with you on it.
Cool. Sounds good. Will do.
And it'll be free of charge. All I need is participation.
Excellent. Cool.
Okay, man. Well, thank you guys. Is there anything else that we should cover? We're sitting at about exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes.
I just want to say that thank you to Fuzzy. You're a force of nature, and we're all lucky to have you here doing this as well. So thanks a lot.
Here, here.
Fuzzy.
And Crypto, don't underestimate yourself, man. You can talk as long as I can.
Crypto.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend, a good weekend, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
Yep, you too. Take care, you guys.
See ya.
Bye, guys. You too, Joey. Keep out of trouble, man. That houseboat and those dolphin swimming sessions are probably going to be illegal soon.